fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off on the Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off on the Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off on the Twitch feed this morning, and I got to get the whole name right. Mile High Hockey Lab.
The city of Denver, the state of Colorado, you guys have been fucking amazing for the last 10 years.
Let me start off on the Twitch feed this morning.
Have more flexibility, we have more depth, we have more guys pulling the rope in the right direction, so starting to see some success.
It's a special year, and I think our guys deserve to have the chips pushed all in.
It was nice when our management goes all in and it puts pressure on our team, and we like pressure.
Winning's tough, and if you think you have a group that could possibly do it, you go all in.
Welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab.
Hello and welcome to the Mile High Hockey Lab. Avalanche fans, my name is Adrian Hernandez. I am here today with Ezra Parter, Jackie K, and Evan Liu. We are going to talk Colorado Avalanche hockey with plenty of diverse topics to touch upon today. Thank you folks so much for joining us. As you all are aware, I'm sure if you are watching this content, there's been some breaking news as of late, as well as some scathing losses since our last episode where we were so boldly picking an Avalanche sweep. My, how the times have changed on this Tuesday afternoon. So let's just get right into it since we have so much to talk about. And folks, if you want to be a part of the conversation, please don't forget to chip in the comments there. We'll touch on whatever it is you want us to, as long as it's appropriate, of course. I feel like that's a disclaimer I have to use today. So as long as your stuff is appropriate, we will absolutely give you a shout out and touch on what it is you have to bring to the table. So Evan, let's start with you, Mr. Managing Editor. You did a piece last night on the Val Nichushkin situation, so I feel like you have a pretty firm understanding of the ins and outs of it. But let me give a breakdown so far as to what I know. Val has been suspended for at least 6 months for violating stage 2 of the NHL's player assistance program. I know it was Dater who infamously first reported the fact that Nichushkin didn't pass a drug test. The cap implications are such that his AAV will not count against the cap for the Avalanche to start next season. And there will also be an available roster spot towards that 23-man roster. And of course, lastly, I don't believe the Avalanche have any grounds for contract termination as we currently sit. Does all that sound good to you, Evan? And what else can you touch on?
Yeah, I think you pretty much covered most of it right there. It is definitely a weird, wacky situation that the team is going to have to work around, and it's unfortunate from a player standpoint, from a business standpoint, from a fan standpoint, however you want to look at it, right?
Yeah.
But of course, you do have to feel for Nichushkin in this trying time. You know, it's the third time that he's left the team now in the last 13 months. and something is obviously bugging him still to this day. And I think that kind of first and foremost, his focus should be on taking care of himself, getting his life together, and taking those steps towards sobriety, whatever that might look like. Off the ice first before trying to make an attempt to come back onto the ice. And of course, that return might not be with the Avalanche for all we know. At the end of the day, this is a business. The Avalanche are a business. The NHL are a business. They're going to want to make as much money as they can with what they can under the salary cap. And you kind of have to balance that out. Do you want to take a chance on another player who has shown that he fits really well into Jared Bednar's system and can play really well on his day, but has off-ice struggles? Or do you bite the bullet and have up to 12 years of cap penalties for buying him out or something along those lines? And as you mentioned, that there is no plausible way, it seems anyway, that there's a possibility that this contract could be terminated or voided or however you want to put it. So it's going to be really tough and interesting to see kind of where things go from here. Obviously, just hoping that Nichushkin is okay and able to make a full path towards recovery, towards this alleged failed drug test that he had.
Yeah, and good choice of word there with the alleged, because I'm not sure that part of the news was in fact ever confirmed.
I think others said it.
Yeah,
I think Leah Hextall did.
Okay, so it has been confirmed. Okay.
I think Friedman might have also tweeted that.
Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, we don't know for sure, but yeah, it's at least not just Dater.
Yeah,
we certainly don't know what that means exactly, because that could mean anything from marijuana to performance enhancing drugs to, we don't know what it means. So it's hard to read into the there are people saying how could he make this choice, and there are people saying it sucks that addiction hits him like this. Both those things could be true, neither could be true. We don't know what it is, so it's really hard to talk about it in those terms. But yeah,
well, and that's kind of where my head was at this morning was. And obviously, this is a situation where there's really no right way to handle breaking the news necessarily. But I really wonder if there was some more work to be done in terms of how this news was broken and shared on the part of the franchise, because I feel like too often in these situations, they're waiting for someone else to break the news and then they kind of react to it, which is what we saw last night. He was in morning skate. And then, 2 hours, I think it was, before puck drop, we get this news starting to kind of roll in. And of course, it's tinged with, and this is why us people who work really hard to follow these teams kind of out of the grace of our heart, we have such a hard time seeming valid in our takes, is because, the team never confirms or denies anything themselves. So it puts kind of everyone in a situation to put their foot in their mouth, which I don't know if that's a part of their strategy, just to kind of muddy up the water so that there's just so many theories out there that none of them can really be put to truth. But I think that there's something to be done here, even in an overarching way, just in terms of the NHL in general, as it comes to being maybe not more transparent in the little details, but in them being detailed, being a reality. We should probably have known about this. To an extent, I think, even for the team and their mindset, I don't know. We don't know. That's it. That's pretty much it. And I think in that unknowing, there's just so much room for people to put their foot in their mouth and really fail Val Nichushkin and the Avalanche on this topic. So we're going to try our very best not to do that today and not to guess as to what happened. It doesn't really matter what the substance was, right? He's in violation of his agreement. That's putting it as simply as it needs to be put. And that comes with consequences. I wrote down my thoughts because I didn't want to just ramble. So I'm gonna look at those now, and I'm gonna tell you, in the realm of human existence, you have to feel for Val, and you have to feel for his family. He's clearly dealing with something that's more significant than sports. Bednar put it best when he says, and I'll echo this, I hope Val Nichushkin finds peace. That's a great way to put it. In the hockey business, though, his loss is going to hurt the Avalanche, not just in this series, not just in this playoff run, but going forward. The Avalanche are going to have a harder time with their roster construction now, depending on how this all settles. It's just such a mystery going forward for the Avalanche. I mentioned in my thoughts initially that it's going to be dead cap, but it's not. So that's a good situation. At least the Avs will have that $6.5 million to play with. But if you intend on him coming back, it's not really like LTIR, because if he comes back, it'll be because he's gone through the process, and there won't be like an extension of that until it's convenient. You know what I mean? Contract will just be back on the books. But hindsight being 2020, man, maybe the Avalanche should have re-signed Nazem Kadri, and seen that through, because here we are in a season where we've gone quote unquote all in for a second line center, but we're having the convenient excuse of a winger not being out of the lineup, and that's really going to be what kills us. And I just think that that's not necessarily fair to those who are critical of the Avalanche in this moment, where they're down 3-1 to a team like the Dallas Stars. But Jackie, Ezra, do you guys have any comments on this further, or what do you guys think?
Well, I think before the nuke situation, it started to become clear they should have thought more about keeping Kadri, but it's tough, because it's tough for so many different reasons, and it is interesting you bring up the Avs never confirm these things on their own. Are people ready for there not to be any exit media? Like, when they're done and they're going to do their little post game, and that's it. And you're never going to hear from them again. And so there's not going to be any answers or clarification or anything like that. Like, this is kind of where we're going to be at for the next few months.
Yep.
Pierre LeBrun reported that contract termination is not a likely option for the Avs. I guess they could try, but I still don't know if they would go that route either, because they can't replace him. You can't just go out and get a free agent. We know they have nothing internally. So, Val has broken the trust, and people aren't going to want to root for him, but he's also the best they have.
Yeah.
And so when he is absent, the Avs are at least getting cap relief. And like you mentioned, you can't just really go out and spend that, but it is also a hedge against if you're planning on paying Landeskog next year.
Yep.
And he can't continue, there's $7 million there as well. So it's kind of like, I think they should spend some of it, maybe not all of it, but there's always somebody injured. What if Landeskog can't play and that frees up $7 million there? I just think you can't be so conservative in building your team. Plus, I don't think they could terminate him or anything while he's still, before he's reinstated.
Yeah.
So I just don't think you could can you even buy him out this summer? I'm not sure if that's even a possibility. They shouldn't. 12 years is ridiculous.
Yeah.
No, they can't.
So it is kind of a wait and see. Like, I'm not sure the Avs can do anything until he's reinstated. So that's 6 months. They just kind of have to sit on it. And maybe in a way that's a good thing to kind of see what transpires in the next 6 months. I also, there's kind of a lot of pearl clutching about this drugs thing, I think. And we just have to kind of be aware that the NHL doesn't have a drug policy like you see in the NFL and such, where players are always tested and a violation is a suspension. It's like, in the NHL, there's only a violation if you're in the program. So a lot of players could be doing drugs, and if they're handling themselves, it's not an issue. And so I think there's a lot like, how could Val do this to them? And I refuse to believe that he's the only one on the team that dabbles in anything. Now, obviously, if they are, they're handling it, and it's not a problem, but I think it's just like, oh my God, he's the one doing drugs and he's the one letting them down. And I'm not quite going down that path. He knows he's in the system, and he knew that this was going to be the next step. But like Ezra said, we don't know. Maybe it could be just as simple as some marijuana, which is legal in Colorado. We don't know what it was that triggered this issue, but another fair question is does he even want the help? Does he see that he has a problem? Is Is this something the team kind of pushed on him because of what happened in Seattle, where they were like, enough's enough? Well, if he didn't really think of it that way. So I just think there's a lot of gray area in here, and it's tough to judge. And I'm not necessarily saying he needs to be gone and he's never going to play for the Avs again, because I think their options are limited, really. And so,
yeah, I don't think they're going to have a choice but to try and let him play again, because otherwise, and that was something I got into a little bit in my notes, was otherwise you're basically going to put him on the trade market and admit to losing value, because
nobody's going to take 6 years. I mean,
No.
if somehow he got terminated or whatever, he would absolutely get signed by someone. Someone would sign him for a 1-year deal.
Quick,
hands down. But but to take on 6 years and all that what is it, still like $30-some million?
Yeah,
that's a lot. And so I don't think you're going to trade that out, but someone would employ him. So that's I don't know. I personally, I would just play him when he's available. Because it is a business, and in a way you have to look at, he's their best chance to win.
Yeah.
And I know and I guess it just have to depend on how everyone feels about him. Can they play with him again? Can they put it aside on the ice? Or are they going to say he absolutely can't be back here again? And I guess that's up to what they say.
Well, go ahead, Evan.
I was going to say, touching on that, because the locker room, I mean, we saw it in the game, right? I think everyone kind of learned about it same time as everybody else did.
Which is so crazy.
Yeah, it's just kind of, that is going to blindside a team. Absolutely it is. And it showed when you put up 2 shots in the first period and just were outright dominated by the Dallas Stars. I mean, that was just a recipe for disaster. And, you look at Nichushkin being out and Taves, being out, of course, with illness, another late scratch as well. I mean, those two alone, I don't even know if they would have made a huge difference, in the game, just because Dallas has been superior on defense. Like they've been insane. We'll talk more about the game later on, but I mostly wanted to comment on like the team obviously being blindsided and kind of shook by the news and whatnot. And it showed, in the post-game pressers, of course. Obviously a lot of like non-comment comments, which was to be expected, I think. But I think that the biggest one was Jack Johnson saying, he made his decisions and that is that. And I think that is very, very telling.
Yeah. But will Jack Johnson even be here?
Yeah, I know. And you think about it, the Avalanche have, maybe 5 players leaving the team at the end of the year. Jack Johnson, Zach Parise, Andrew Cogliano, Nichushkin, and who knows about Gabriel Landeskog.
Yeah.
Those are 5 big
guys.
Walker.
In 2 years, if Rantanen doesn't re-sign with the Colorado Avalanche, we will be left with Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar from the core that was the 2022.
And Taves too, but
I
still get you.
I still consider Taves kind of like a fringe piece of that core, like a nice little addition to the already established core when we did get him from the Islanders. But I agree with you. Like at that point, he'll be the third member of the core for sure. But I think when you look at like who it was in 2022 and who it is now and who it could be in a year, that's scary. I put that at the end of my notes too. I said, this stuff happens fast. Look at the Pittsburgh Penguins. You go from being a dynasty, and the Avs just are in the potential to be a dynasty. They haven't even won enough to be considered that. And things escalate quickly in terms of losing guys and being on the bad side of some of these contracts, i.e. one like Val Nichushkin's contract where you're stuck with it and he's, unavailable. So,
and you look at last night, they had, I think, 4 forwards playing that was on the Cup team and 8 total players and 4 defensemen. That's it. So it's not even the same team anymore.
No.
And this is kind of my thing. I think they did too much. They brought in too many new faces. They tinkered too much. Are they even a team? Where's the chemistry? 2 years ago they said that the chemistry was so important. They didn't want to do anything to disrupt it, blah, blah, blah. But now it doesn't matter. Now just bring in all these new people, give them a month, and we're all going to win the Cup together. And I don't really believe that has solidified them as a team. And I think if they do get eliminated, that's part of their downfall. And it's unfortunate that, well, the Nichushkin situation is unfortunate for many different reasons. But another reason is it's going to completely overshadow and any accountability that the team is going to be able to have of their own shortcomings and the mistakes that they made. It's just going to be like, well, Nuke was the reason why they only put up 2 shots on goal. They lost. They're mentally and morally beaten, and that's going to be it.
Yeah. A week ago, we were praising the way that the team came together. And, so I don't know how fair that is, because
well, that would have been my opinion a week ago as well. It's not like a new opinion.
Yeah. I think
okay. But I mean,
for me, that's true, Ezra. Yeah.
Obviously things have gone wrong. I still think the peak of the Avalanche in game 1, the way they came back, the way they rallied for each other and to each other, it shows that this can be a team. Obviously, it's new faces in the last 2 years. That's kind of the nature of the beast. It's very rare that a team stays together for in a more than 8 guys for a long period of time. That's,
especially if they win.
But do you get 5 new players at the deadline? That I think that's a little more unusual.
What choice did they have? I mean, I want to talk about Val real quick before we get into that. But I don't know. They couldn't have not brought in guys. They weren't the team. They would not have won with the roster they had. But in terms of Val, I mean, I think it definitely shows that what confuses me the most is the team knew, not the players, but the organization knew that this was a possibility, and they weren't ready to deal with it in a way that prepared the players to play. I mean, that seems like a huge failure to me. Like whether you expect him to fail a drug test or not, that if he fails a drug test, he will be suspended for 6 months. You got to have something in place to prepare everybody for that. Maybe there's like HIPAA violations or something, or like some kind of like rule around telling people. I don't know, but like you got to have the press release ready for the moment that happens, because it could happen. That seems like a huge failure to me.
Yes.
Communicating with the media, not really a strength of the Avalanche, but like something major like this, especially since it just happened a year ago, like you got to be on top of it. It really, really, really disappointed me. Val, other people, including seems like Jack Johnson have used like disappointment around him. I don't think that's fair. I don't know what the substance is. If it is, honestly, if it's marijuana, then yeah, I'm really disappointed, because that's not, I mean, like the substance doesn't really matter that much. You're right. We shouldn't speculate or anything, but if somebody's going through something addiction related, I feel for them and I want them to be okay. If somebody's making choices like smoking or drinking after games or something like that, then that feels so much worse.
Yep.
In terms of, how the player let down his team. It's just,
and that's, dude, and I'm with you, Ezra. That's where my frustration lies too. I mean, this stuff happens like in every sport. This stuff happens, but where I'm most frustrated is, and I've seen people say like, Jared Bednar is a head coach of a hockey team. He's not a babysitter, yada, yada, yada. Same thing for the management. And I get that. Val Nichushkin's a grown ass man. But like, you're right. Like what are the supports really? If in the most important time of the year, where it happened once already last year, is where he's, for lack of a better phrase, left to his vices. Like what in the world are we doing? And then that lack of communication, as much as we like to pretend like this is this manly thing that we love to be watching, it is for the guys playing. But really it's entertainment. And they're trying to satisfy the fans, no matter what the result is. That's the job of the Colorado Avalanche as a franchise. And the way they went about the news yesterday was not in any way satisfactory to the fan base. I've never in my life, in my 31 years as an Avalanche fan, been more demoralized before the puck even dropped than I was yesterday. It felt like the puck dropping was going to just be a reminder of something terrible that had happened. And That's so sad. We're supposed to look forward to a game 5 in the second round at 2-2. I was sitting there going, well, this is about to be a manifestation of all that is going on right now. And that's exactly what happened. It was just like meh on ice.
Yeah.
And I want to touch on something that Jackie mentioned too. She said, this will serve as an excuse. And I'm gonna make a statement here because I can't allow that as a fan. Like, this cannot be an excuse for Jared Bednar. I know what you mean, Jackie, but this can't be an excuse for this core either. Like, dynasties, they find a way in the face of all this stuff. And if you can't win without one guy, you're not really a very good team in the first place, if you ask me. So it's time for them to pick themselves up, be the players that they say they are, and rely on that Stanley Cup experience to find a way. Legends are legends because they find a way in the face of adversity. No one talks about people because of how easy their path to success was. That's the opposite. And you want to leave behind a legacy, Nathan MacKinnon, now's your chance. If you win a Hart trophy this year and look back at this season, is it really going to feel all that great anyway, based on this performance in round 2? Probably not, at least not in the eyes of somebody who claims to be a world-class competitor. Can't just rag on Nate. If you want to win this series, you have to be the most valuable player to your team. And that's just not 29. That's 96. That's 7. That's 8. That's everybody on the roster. There's no tomorrow. This is a very, very consequential series for the Avalanche, as it turns out. We didn't know a week ago, but as it turns out today, things couldn't be more important. This win couldn't be more important because the way things start falling after this is going to change completely based on how this series ends. So this is my challenge to the Colorado Avalanche, to be that dynasty that they have set out to be, because this is the challenge. These are the challenges you face along the way, and they're the ones you have to meet head on. So I hear you, Jackie, but I just can't allow it. No excuses. It can't be the reason. The reason can only be because you didn't play the way you thought you could. You have to be accountable in this situation. Otherwise, we're just going to be doing it again next year, and we're going to have some serious issues. But let's talk about being accountable. Evan, what is it that the Avalanche can do in terms of accountability and adjustments to overcome this 3-1 series deficit to the Dallas Stars?
Man, I mean, I'll admit, I don't have a lot of hope and confidence, so I don't know if I'm the right person to ask this question to. But I mean, here, because we've been ragdolling and like going down on this team for the last 25 minutes, let's throw in a little bit of hope here.
Okay.
In 2020, during the pandemic bubble playoffs, the Avs were down 3-1 to the Stars in this exact same scenario. They came back very injured, very shorthanded, and at least forced Game 7 overtime with like their fourth string goaltender and had a shot at it, right? Now, of course, that Avalanche team and that Stars team are very different from now this Avalanche team and this Stars team. So you have to take a look at that, of course. I would be very pleased if they force a game 6 at the very least and bring it back to Denver, because then at that point, who knows? Then you have home ice advantage for you for at least one game. Try and force a Game 7 and hope for the best. It's Game 7, right? And there have been some signs ish, and I say that very, very delicately, because Game 3 was probably the most frustrating game I've ever watched. I was sitting up in the nosebleeds and I was just like, what on earth am I watching right now?
Yeah.
And then Game 4, of course, you have all of the other, news and whatnot coming in before the game, of course, and that's something that the team can't control, right? They just have to go out there and answer the bell. They did not do that. They showed signs in the third period to an extent. It was the most shots that they had recorded on Jake Ottinger in a long time, quite frankly, in that third period, but none of them were grade A chances. What the Avs need to do is get to the front of the net. They need to do their dirty work, and they need to get pucks to the net. That could involve, obviously getting like Miles Wood in there, Ross Colton. They've kind of been the driving forces of that. On the third line, I would say the third line is probably one of the better lines that played last night against Dallas in Game 4. Miles Wood, of course, scored the overtime winner in Game 1. So you really have to dig deep, and try to push forward and at least try and make things interesting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where your leadership of like Andrew Cogliano comes in. I saw this in one of our comment sections on one of our articles. What if Andrew Cogliano hosts another players only meeting? He had that after Game 5 of the Stanley Cup final, right? He had that then. What if he has another one now before the start of Game 5 in the second round, right? That could drive you forward. And I would assume that Jack Johnson would want to do the same. He's probably angry and upset. It seems so anyway. Why not use that as a driving force on the ice, right?
Yeah.
Make things interesting. At least put a fight up against Dallas and try and make things interesting at the very least. Because I don't know. I think I speak for a lot of Avs fans when I say there's not a lot of hope right now at the moment. If you give us some, we will be behind you. Don't you worry.
I was gonna say, like, it could be as simple as just scoring first to reinstill a little bit of hope for the Avalanche. So I got to give you some credit, Ezra, because you mentioned, just last week we were talking about how everyone turning on Georgiev seemed to have kind of like galvanized the unit. And there's potential for that to happen here too with the entire team, where as Evan, as you put it, we spent the first 20 minutes of this broadcast kind of dumping on the Avalanche. And you can feel that it's us against the world mentality. We've seen how that kind of seemed to have helped the Nuggets. In fact, when they were down 2-0 to the Timberwolves, and everybody seemed to turn on them as well. So I hope you're right, Ezra. Like, I hope that that resolve that we spoke of last week comes back to the forefront for the Avalanche. But Evan, you speak to your confidence level in the Avalanche, and I do want to bring up I sent out a poll this morning because I was just very curious as to what the feeling in the room was, and I'm going to go see what the results are as of right now.
I can't imagine they're feeling good.
I haven't even seen this poll, so now I got to go find it myself.
Yeah, it says, "Are you confident in the Colorado Avalanche today?" ? Then that was at 7:27 in the morning. 83.9% of 373 voters say they are not confident in the Colorado Avalanche today. So that just, you're right, Evan. Everyone's kind of down in the dumps in terms of their belief in this team. But Ezra, where are you at in terms of confidence?
Well, I guess, you can put me in the minority there. I think there are a lot of reasons to be confident about this team still. It's obviously last game is a horrible start, a horrible finish. Everything off the ice seriously affected the team, and I can't blame them for that. It's whether they're mad at Val or sad for Val or whatever, they're not in the right headspace.
Yeah.
You can't really give them a pass because it is a game that they needed to win, but I'm willing to look past it. If you just look at games 1, 2, and 3, the Avalanche controlled play for the most part. The Avalanche were the better team on the ice, especially in Game 3. Oh my God, they didn't look good watching them. They couldn't connect on passes. They couldn't do anything else. But they had the puck the whole time, even though they were missing these passes. They dominated that game, and they should have won. The fact that they lost that game probably led to a lot of. Maybe that drove Val to do whatever he did. They should not have lost that game. That was terrible. Yeah. But they can play that well. What they did well in Game 1 and Game 3 that they need to get back to and do in Game 5, because they certainly did not in Game 4, was chip pucks in and work to get them back. And last night they did not have the motor to do that. They sort of tried to, and it just it looked awful. We all saw it. Game 2 they got away from it. They were like, oh, look at how great we are. We can make that comeback. We're going to go for our cute offense that we go for. Jared Bednar was using the word stubborn a lot in press conferences. They were playing stubborn, and it really focuses, like, that part of the conversation has to focus in on Nate and Mikko, because those are the two guys who need to chip and chase and not try to be fancy, because when they try to be fancy, Dallas is too good defensively to let them win at that. Yeah. Now, I don't know the situation with Chris Tanev's injury. That hit from Ross Colton was incredible. That was maybe the highlight of the game for Colorado. I hope he's not hurt because I don't want anybody to be hurt, but also I hope he can't play. That would help, like I don't want him to be seriously injured, but I do want him to be out. So that would make a big difference. I mean, if they have to go with Nils Lundqvist more minutes and somebody else that I don't even know who they would go with. Do they still have? It doesn't matter. It doesn't. Maybe Hakanpää comes back. Whatever.
Yeah.
Whoever their 6D is, if it's not Tanev, it's going to be bad. And that would be a huge help to the Avalanche to get in on the forecheck, turn pucks over, hit guys, make some plays. That we've seen that can work. That is how they made their comeback in Game 1. That's how they controlled play in Game 3, and it is what they have to do. Now, do they have the will to do it right now? I don't know. That's the part where my confidence wanes because I'm like, everything we've heard about from them so far since we found out about Val has been pretty down in the dumps, and it's hard to come back from that. It's hard to play hard for each other when you're feeling bad about each other. Not necessarily about each other, but your situation.
Yeah.
So that's what we have to see. If they can come out strong, play smart, not stubborn at the beginning of the first period tomorrow, there's a chance and there's reason to be confident. But if they come out slow, oof,
yikes.
It's gonna be a long night.
Yeah, and to your point, Ezra, my brother came in yesterday before the game and before all the news, and he asked me like, why is Nathan McKinnon and Mikko and these guys, why can't they seem to break through? And it's stubborn is a good way to put it, I think, because like we know what it takes. They know what it takes. They know they're not going to skill it up against this team. And that's what I told them. I said, what Pete DeBoer does and has done to the Avalanche since ever facing them in this era is he forces them to play hockey like everybody else. And you can't just take what the defense gives you against teams with Pete DeBoer at the helm. He's going to take away your best thing and then kind of deal with whatever else comes around the edges. And so it's like, that's why I did focus on McKinnon in my little diatribe, was because like he is this guy who stands on the beacon of discipline and hard work when no one's watching and all this stuff that I think truly does set him apart as a competitor. I've compared him to the late Kobe Bryant, like my entire career as somebody speaking in front of a microphone. So it's like, if that's true about someone, then this is the moment where that needs to come through. And you're right, Ezra. It's about chip and chase and doing it the dirty and hard way. Because just because you're up for a Hart Trophy doesn't mean you're above the right way of playing hockey. And so that's going to be a big thing. But Jackie, I want to hear your thoughts kind of on what has to change and how confident you are in the Avs on the brink of elimination.
Well, some power play goals would be nice. I think that's something they can control. I believe it's 0 for 9 in their 3 losses, including 2 shorthanded goals. I mean, that part's just not acceptable.
Yeah.
I think they had 2 power play goals in Game 1, and then since then they're 0 for 9. Like that's been a recurring theme for me. I think in every elimination they've had with this core, under Bednar, with the exception of the Vegas series, which their power play was okay and that wasn't the problem. But every other elimination, the power play going completely dry has been a big factor. I think against Seattle it was like 1 for 17, like something absurd like that. So this is a theme, and we've talked about the power play all year. I've talked about the power play for years. It does work, and you have elite players on it, and it was the top 5 or top 6 in the league, but it is so susceptible to getting shut down for stretches of games, and like they need one now. Like it can't just come eventually. Like it has to happen.
Yeah.
So that's one huge key for me. I think you mentioned score first. That would be helpful too. I think these are little things that are reasonable to expect and to ask of them. And if they do that, they'll be giving themselves a better chance to win. before this all went down with Val, I felt like they maybe had one more kind of like miracle in them. I don't know if that was even a game or two or something. I think it's possible they could go down and win in Dallas because nobody's expecting them to. But like what you said, the whole get in on the forecheck and do all that stuff. You kind of need Val to do that. So that part's tough too, because you're going to be asking some guys to do a lot more heavy lifting in that area than they're used to. I mean, these things are possible, but like for me, I just said if they can get the power play going, I think they'll at least give themselves a chance to win that game.
Yeah, and what's funny is, to your credit, you mentioned the Vegas series being the only playoff series where they were kind of good on the power play but got eliminated. But that was also the series where Pete DeBoer took to the podium and complained about Mikko Rantanen flopping, and then the Avs didn't even get a power play opportunity for the last 3 games of that series. So, or I think 2 maybe even. But yeah, you're right. It's one of those things where, like, when you have Val Nichushkin and you don't, and you look at these statistics and the difference between them, the one that really jumps out is the power play. And that's very, very unfortunate given our current circumstances. And you're right, Jackie. That's because someone needs to play that net front presence, bumper / screen role. And
that's also funny that his loss on the power play is now what we're saying is like the biggest loss. Right. And we still have McKinnon, Makar, and Rantanen on this power play, and we're saying they lost their biggest key. Isn't that a problem? Isn't that kind of like here's your sign?
Here's my thing too. It's like who were those guys? If all things were going the way they should, it would be Gabe Landeskog and Val Nichushkin. And in fact, I think Val would be on the second power play, and Gabe would be playing that role on the first power play if he were healthy. But we don't have Gabe Landeskog. So let's go get Casey Middlestat, who has played fine, but is he a net front guy? No.
But why are we depending on it just being net front? Like, why can't our 3 elite players score on the power play?
Well, and I agree with you there, and I think it's the approach on the power play. Like the style of the Avs power play is very, very dependent upon that net front role, because Kale doesn't appear dangerous from the point if the goalie gets to see him shoot.
And that's been my problem the whole time. Yeah. Why is he just handcuffed to the point? He is the most unique and best defenseman in the league. Why can't we use him as a shooter? Why can't we have other looks? Why can't we have 2D on the power play and use him as a shooter? Like, you're just going to go down with the ship here. Like, McKinnon has 10, I think, power play goals this season. I mean, for somebody that's going to win MVP, the fact that he only has 10 power play goals, I mean, it's great that he did all his damage at even strength, but right now we're asking for a power play goal, and he's not even, quote unquote, like good or exceptional on the power play.
Yeah.
Have y'all watched much of the Edmonton power play this postseason?
I've tried.
Sure. I mean, they move around. Like, McDavid doesn't have a spot. He just goes wherever.
Exactly. Draisaitl has his spot. Bouchard has his spot. Hyman is in front of the net. But then it's McDavid moving all around everywhere. And I think it's Nugent Hopkins most of the time, just kind of hanging out wherever else he needs to be, kind of mirroring McDavid's movements in a way to create another option elsewhere. It's brilliant. And obviously McDavid is is an incredible talent who can do whatever he can do that other people can't do. But I feel like you put Makar in that role. You put McKinnon
I know.
In
why
that
can't
role,
Makar be
the
that
Avalanche
guy?
can do that. Yeah, exactly. So it's very frustrating. If I was coordinating this power play, Rantanen would be the Bouchard, McKinnon would be the Draisaitl, and Makar would be the McDavid. And I don't even care who the other guy is. It's probably Lehkonen to retrieve pucks, but or Drouin to pass, whatever. Either way, doesn't matter. That would be incredible, and it would work so well. And I guess
it's like have a secondary look. Like, it's one thing, okay, you want to have your standard setup, your umbrella, whatever. Like, have another trick in the bag. Have another look. Have something where the other team is like, what are we going to do? How are we going to cover Makar?
100%. That's why it goes stagnant, is because it is stubbornness. And there is stubbornness that Bednar comments on about McKinnon and Rantanen, and he's right. But there's also a lot of stubbornness in Bednar. And
Yeah,
that's frustrating.
100%.
I love Bednar. He's a magnificent coach. I will never call to fire him. And I see him in my dreams. He belongs there. But like,
yeah, 100%.
But he needs to make this adjustment, I think. And I know he maybe isn't the one who X's and O's the power play, but he is the one in charge. So he needs to make this adjustment. He needs to stop being stubborn about this. And frankly, one other thing, and I'm sure this will launch us into another conversation, but I'd love him to stop being so stubborn about playing Parisi in the top 6. It just is not.
Oh my
working.
God. Yes. And like
I like Duhaime on the second line in the regular season.
It was such a shot to my confidence because my first thought when they said Nuke was out was, shit, now Parise has to be in the top 6.
Same, 100%.
Right? Why is he the guy?
And
I was retired for half the year, and now he's in the top 6.
Wonderful career, but it is over, and he is an effective bottom line player. Maybe we haven't really seen that because we haven't seen him play down there, but he is not working in the top 6. And I liked Duhaime. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
Yeah, and
Trennan is awesome. Trennan should move up. Trennan's the mini Val. Let's put Trennan in Val's spot in every role.
And I would have liked Duran with McKinnon. I mean, that was work. Like, you need goals, you need offense.
They did play together a lot, but yeah.
Eventually, they got back to it. Yeah. But it's just like, let it ride, guys. That's my thing. Is like, hopefully the Avalanche can lean into the good here, because that should be the story right now, and it sucks that it's not. It should be Jonathan Drouin came back from looking like he'd probably never be a full-time pro again, to being on the top line with Nathan McKinnon in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And obviously he takes a skate blade right before round 1, and here we are. The same day he comes back, we have this news of Val Nichushkin drop. And it's just like it never happened. It's like Drouin never came back at all. You lost one, and you took 2 steps back and 1 step forward because you lost Devon Toews too. And who knows?
It does make you wonder, like, what witch did they make a deal with? Like, how does this all I don't get it.
I think they were missing
how much happens to this team.
I think they were missing one of Drouin, Lehkonen, or Nichushkin, like, at all times this
year.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's probably Evan's cat constantly crossing his screen every time we do a podcast. That's probably – no, I'm just kidding, Evan. But, Evan, you've been real quiet over there, so I want to send one your direction, because I feel like when you're quiet, it's because you don't agree with me, and I love you for it. But my question to you, I guess, is, like, where do you stand on if the Avalanche do lose tomorrow? What is your take on the season? Is this a successful season or a non-successful season?
Well, first off, I was just quiet because I was just letting the conversation. I don't disagree with anybody. I was going to bring up Jared Bednar and the comments and whatnot, but Ezra already did that. So good on you. If they lose tomorrow, is the season a success or a failure? At this point, I have to say failure. And, I said it last night on the Mile High Hockey Twitter account when I was tweeting the game that this feels like 2021, but worse. Yeah. And I'll admit, I was at a remote summer camp in Pennsylvania working during 2021. So I was not in tune as much as I am now with this team as I was in 2021. But this one just feels worse. And it goes back to this. It goes back to 2020 with Landeskog getting his knee cut by a skate blade. And so you lose him after winning a Stanley Cup. He hasn't played since then. You go all in, as you say. You trade Bo Byron for Casey Middlestat. You have a resurrecting Jonathan Drouin. You have Nathan McKinnon on a career year. Like, that is something that you have to take advantage of, right? And the Avs were doing that. They looked great against Winnipeg, right? And we're 1 game away from sweeping them. And I guess I'll get back to that later. And then you come in against Dallas and, for lack of a better term, kind of shit the bed. And it's not great. It is really like 2021 all over again, where you are a better team, but then it just kind of all falls apart. And I also say it's worse because of all the off ice situation as well with Nichushkin. That was something that was not dealt with at all in 2021 at all. And of course, as already mentioned, of course, Nichushkin, is going to hopefully get the help that he needs off the ice first and foremost. And I think that's also where a lot of the human element also comes into it that maybe was missing in 2021 as well. So really, really just kind of unfortunate and crappy. And this mantra of all in, of course, I'm going to sound like Jaggy here. Like I have not loved it now for the last little while. Just because of that.
It's so ridiculous.
Jackie, it's like I got to give you a lot of credit because for weeks, and I still think that Casey Middlestat was a good ad, but I think what you were pointing towards was correct, which is that like, okay, but if you do this whole sell off the farm thing to make a run and you don't really make a run, this is going to look really stupid really fast. And that's kind of where we sit right now. It could change. We still have the opportunity. But I only think that that's true because I feel like they got it backwards and wrong before the Casey Middlestat thing. I get back to the Nazem Kadri part because I know that Nas wanted, I believe, what was it, like 7 million?
7 or 8 million, yeah.
7 or 8 million at the time. And we also had Val to bring back and Lehkonen to bring back and Manson to bring back. And that's to me where the choice was made. That was the wrong choice, which was, and it's easy for me to think that as we sit here today, but I don't have a choice but to think about it here and today. And if you would have picked Nazem Kadri over Val Nichushkin in that moment, not a lot of this stuff, the Landeskog stuff still happens. But you don't need to trade to go get your 2C. You still have him. You don't need, like, it's just the way the chips fall as a result of that move has really come back to haunt the Avalanche. And Jackie, to your credit, that's what you've been afraid of this whole time. Is like, well, are they making choices that are cutting off their nose to spite their face just because they think they're in a window? And if they lose tomorrow, that's pretty much how it's going to feel. And I don't have much of a rebuttal. Ezra, what do you got for me?
Well, I just think that in that moment, you're looking at a guy who just had a career year that he'll never replicate, going into his 30s, and a guy who is on the rise, has gotten steadily better over time, and is in his mid to late 20s. There's no question who you resign. Like, if they're asking for the same money, it's an easy choice. You resign the younger player in that situation. But they're not even asking for the same money. Val's asking for less. There's no question there in my mind. And Lehkonen, there's no question about him either. It's the same situation. I mean, Kadri was the right choice from an organizational standpoint to move on from. From an on the ice hockey standpoint, the 2C spot is harder to fill, but like you can't make the choice to sign on for the older player, especially when you just did that for Landeskog. Like, you can't have two of those guys who are going to be on your books for $7 million in their, age 34, 35 seasons. Like, that's just, you're in trouble.
They kind of made that choice, though. I mean, Taze is signed into his 30s. McKinnon signed forever. I mean, not that that was the wrong choice, but they kind of already made that bed.
I was talking about secondary forwards, like top line players. That's a different thing. And I do think Landeskog and Kadri are both a tier below, like a McKinnon Rantanen, right? I think that's fair to say.
For sure. And
Taves is a number one defenseman on most teams, so it makes sense to pay him into his. Defensemen generally can play later in their careers than forwards can, older, I should say. So I don't have a problem with the Taves one. I feel like that's different. But yeah, the choice between Kadri in that situation and Nichushkin wasn't really a choice. It was obvious.
Nichushkin to me is more unique. I think if we were going to having this discussion 2 years ago, we'd say, like, how do you even get another nuke? How do you even replace that guy? Like, so, but then, I don't really believe there's this big difference between wingers and centers, but, you'd have that point too. And the other thing is, do you really believe the Avs had no clue that Nichushkin had issues
That's
at
a
the
good
time?
Question. Right? Did he have red flags then? We don't know.
What do we know about his time in Dallas? You know what I mean? Truly.
That too. Like, they were so
he
ready
couldn't score.
to...
I don't think he was scoring other stuff.
Right. But they were so ready to be done with him. Was that part of it?
Right. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. I think we should kind of leave it at this: is that there were rumors of Nichushkin and something with his family. I don't remember exactly what it was. One of the Dallas folks that I was talking to had brought it up. But there was also speculation about his injury after the 2022 finals and maybe being something happened there after that. I'm not going to speculate too much more than that because I do want to focus on this. I meant to say it earlier. This entire postseason performance has also unfortunately been overshadowed by that news, but we should really focus on something else here as well. Alexander Georgiev, after game 1 of the first round, has been sublime. He has been phenomenal. And that's another reason why I would say, too, that this has kind of been a failure because Georgiev has bounced back brilliantly.
Yeah. And I thought we were only a goalie away, right?
That showed that's a lot more than that.
It's not like they have money to replace him.
Well, there's a lot more problems than that now. But shout out to Alexander Georgiev because he has been phenomenal after game 1 of the first round, and he has kept these last few games from being a whole lot worse.
Oh my God, game 3 could have been like 10-0. Yeah, absolutely, Evan, and good for you, sir, for bringing a little bit of light of positivity to this program today. And you're right, dude. Like, and we talked about it last week. I said, didn't we learn from Georgiev when we trashing Mikko? Like, guys can turn it around fast. So let's just take that overarching approach. Didn't we learn to not bash and just to wait and watch and hope? Because that's really all we have as fans is to wait and watch and hope. But I like that, Evan, because Georgiev took a lot of flack, and he's been the best Av in the last 2 games, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But to get back to the discussion we were having about kind of the Nichushkin Kadri choice, I completely agree with you, Ezra. Like, when you put it down the way you did, you're totally correct. When I think of this team, though, and where they sit now, it's hard for me not to wonder if there should have been more value placed on leadership and personality and play style, because Nichushkin checks the play style box. I don't really know about the personality and leadership box. Kadri checks the play style box, checks the leadership box, but was older and more expensive. And I think like value, like leadership and experience mean you get paid more in most industries. And so like, yes, you're trying to get the best player for the cheapest price, but you're also, like Jackie spoke to, and the players have, trying to maintain the balance of your room and the camaraderie. And what team was closer than that 2022 team? And how can we not remember Nazem Kadri as kind of the epicenter of that closeness, especially after things went down in St. Louis in the second round? So it's like you lose Landeskog, who's the heart and soul of the team. You lose Kadri, who's kind of the second beat to that heart and soul that season. You lose a guy like JT Compher, who does all the right things no matter what. You lose a guy like Logan O'Connor, who does all the right things no matter what, to injury, different story. But still, my point is the 2C vacuum that was left wasn't just the on the ice 2C version or on the books 2C. It was that leadership, that personality. And I think that that's really where the Avs lack right now. Nathan McKinnon's never been that guy. We know this. We know that. Mikko's was that guy last year, and it killed him, basically. So, I don't know. It's just where I see it.
I'm even wondering if it was a mistake to let Comfer go. And to be fair, I was ready to be done with him. But looking back, he would have cost, $5 million. They went and spent $4 million of that on Johansson, which was a mistake. Like, I just think they have made a series of mistakes, and it's easier to say in hindsight, but would we be better off right now if we had paid Comp for the $5 million, or, could have even been less if it was a re-signing, but let's say in the ballpark of $5 million. We never thought of him as a true 2C, always wanted a little bit more from him. But he was growing into his game. He was part of the Cup team, the leadership. maybe it was a mistake to move on from him. And I never thought I would say that.
Yeah.
But looking back,
he'd look pretty good in that second line right wing spot right now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All things considered, though, I mean, like we could go back through the last 10 plus years of Avalanche moves and transactions and whatnot. A lot has to go right to win a Stanley Cup. That happened in 2022.
Yeah.
You know, there were, off the top of my head, I could think of 3 injuries, and they all bounced back. Or 2 of them bounced back from it anyway. Gerard was, of course, hurt with his broken sternum. Kemper came back from his eye injury, and Kadri came back in phenomenal fashion in the Stanley Cup final, of course. And otherwise, there wasn't too much concern outside of that.
Fair.
And that team is special. That team is going to be very different from any other team in Avalanche history, simply because they did go all the way and win the Stanley Cup. A lot has to go right to make that happen. It unfortunately, you know, more likely than not, has just not panned out that way this year. And the Avs are going to have to, they're going to have to sit in the bed that they made in, and lay in the bed that they made in. That's the saying.
They made their bed and now they're going to lay in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
well, and they did, and they did a little bit of buy now, pay later. So the paying's going to be coming, and we'll see. I don't think the team's going to be terrible moving forward, but there's just,
as long as you have Nate McKinnon and Cale Makar, you'll be all right at the minimum. It'll just be when we get into the playoffs where those pieces around them start to pop out in a bad way. And I'm with you though. If this year's version of the Colorado Avalanche are able to get past the second round, get into the third round, and win a Stanley Cup, I mean, I will be more impressed with this version than I was with the 2022 version, based on what you just mentioned. There's a lot more adversity happening right now. But as I said earlier, this is the stuff of legends. If you can get through this, that's how you go on as somebody that, you know, is highly revered in the sports world. But we're going on a little long, which I kind of anticipated. Evan, do you have time for bold predictions?
Let's do it real quick.
All right, let's do our bold predictions. I'm going to rehash last week's really fast. Jackie, you said Georgiev will start every game in the playoffs so far. That is correct. I'm going to give you a ding because it's been a few games. You said Gerard will score a goal.
Yeah, I know. He hasn't given me my goal yet.
Evan, you said Casey Middlestat will get 3 assists in the first 2 games, and we wanted to wait till after game 2 because he didn't have any in the first, and he didn't have any in the second. Ezra, I regrettably wrote in the script, you still believe in the sweep, and Joe Drouin returns in game 3 with Rantanen scoring 2 goals because you were hoping that would free him up. You were also hoping Val Nichushkin would still be in the lineup, and that was...
I did have that in mind, yeah.
I said that Cale Makar would have a 4.9 between now and the next episode for similar reasons, and for similar reasons that was wrong. So let us play that bold prediction track. Folks, if you don't know, you send us your bold predictions. We will read them live on air, and we will come back to them next week and see about if you get a ding or an X. So I'm going to roll that track. It's time for this week's bold predictions.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
I call that bold talk.
All right. So who's ready? I'm going to put it that way. Does anybody have their... Evan, you're ready? Let's roll.
I got to do it anyway since I got to run. But
okay.
I don't think that this team, or in particular one player, is going to go out quietly, and that is Nathan McKinnon, because I think that he is going to be very, very angry and frustrated with his team and how things have gone and whatnot. And I think that he's at the very least not going to just kind of, crawl over and lay on his side and quit. I say that he's going to score 2 goals in game 5 and at least make things interesting. I won't say if they win or lose, but he'll at least make things interesting.
Okay. Evan, 2 goals in game 5 from the Nate Dog, 2 goals. I mean, if that happens, it'll be hopefully the first goal is Nathan McKinnon's goal in game 5. And then the last goal is Nathan McKinnon's second goal. And hopefully that last goal is a winner. But hey, who am I? I like that. We're keeping it positive here. Jackie, how about let's go with you this time?
Well, since I complained about the power play, I guess my bold prediction has to be about the power play, right?
Right.
So, I I'll say they score a power play goal in Game 5, and I'll say it's for Mikko.
I like it because you're kind of doubling down on your Mikko love. Well, it's been Kale you've wanted more from on the power play like throughout the year.
Yeah, but I just think it'd be funny since, well, Mikko was getting, until this Val thing happened, Mikko was getting built up into the fan base scapegoat for some reason. And so I think it would just be poetic, even if they don't win the game, that Mikko just scores in the last game or close to the last game, and just to kind of thwart that scapegoat.
Yeah, that's fair. I like it. Ezra, what do you got for me?
I'm gonna say we get a lineup surprise tomorrow. Somebody who's healthy is not gonna play, and something
that would be nice.
Like a
something interesting.
Healthy scratch.
You mean someone like Kovalenko, Foodie, maybe just anything interesting?
Yeah, I don't
Malinsky?
even want to use. Yeah, Malinsky and Kovalenko were the two in my head. I don't know which one it'll be, so I didn't want to put a name on it, but that's my thinking.
Oh man, if only Landeskog was Superman. Or
I guess that's another question, maybe more of a post-mortem question, but should Bednar have, tried to mix up the bottom of his lineup more?
I just think he wasn't willing to not give Cogliano ice time.
Yeah.
And if he's not the one coming out, I don't know who is. So Duhaime maybe, but like
and there's the play style personality type thing that I think Bednar values more than management. And so it's like he's keeping Cogs. I'm gonna keep Cogs in my bottom six because that's the kind of guy I need. But
I can't see them scratching him. Like, it could be his last game, let's be honest.
Yeah,
but I mean,
they both. It's like if you scratch them and we lose, then that's their career.
Scratch. But like, I think they could live without Kiviranta. I know that
he didn't have his most effective game, that's for sure.
But I just feel like at this time of the year, Bednar has like almost all the players on like cards, and he just has them like in a row, in a line of like the totem pole, the ranking, and he just sticks with that. So then like one guy goes out, he just goes down one rung. And then another guy goes out, and then it can be like the next guy. But he has it like set. He has the hierarchy, is what I'm trying to say. So like everybody's just stacked in a hierarchy, and that's the way it goes. And like nobody is gonna play over somebody else unless there's an injury.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that just leaves me with the final bold prediction. It looks like between now and our next episode, this series will settle one way or another. And I mean, if we're doing the last bold prediction of the season, I'm not going to sit here and boldly predict that the Avalanche lose. So I will boldly predict that this is not our last playoff edition, and that we will be back to talk Colorado Avalanche in round 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs early next week. How about that?
Oh yeah,
I like that.
Love
if you're
it.
right, you need to give yourself like 3 dings.
I was thinking the same thing.
A ding for every unlikely win. I'll take it. That's
exactly a ding. 3 dings for round 3, 3 dings for 3 wins. Yes. I like it.
Right.
All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. We have 325 current live viewers. Thank you to all.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, I know today's episode was a little bit of a downer, but you know what? We roll with the ebbs and flows of fans because we are them. So we hope we've at least given you a place to hear yourself be heard in some of our words as well. And if you enjoyed this content, please head on over to milehighhockey.com. We have more stuff there, and always, give us a follow on X at Mile High Hockey. And lastly, please head on over to our Spotify and Apple podcasts. Our extensive catalogs have gotten more and more extensive as we've cruised right along this season. So go ahead and check all that out. We are actually on our 63rd episode since our fancy rebrand. So congratulations to the 3 of you on your 63rd edition. And before we go, I do want to say Jacob was part of our show for a very long time, and he hasn't been in a minute. And that's because he's now the managing editor of a different publication, a political publication. I believe it's called Splinter. So head on over there. Best wishes to you, Jacob. Thank you for all of your time and effort while you were here with us at Mile High Hockey. And here's to us having another playoff edition of the Mile High Hockey Lab next week. I'm rolling and I'm hoping for it, Colorado Avalanche fans. So go Avs until next time, and go Nuggets. What the heck?
Thank you for tuning into the Mile High Hockey Lab.